Hi, we're back. All right, so I'm going to do the exact same problem, but now I'm going to use node voltage analysis. And I realize that it's not always an obvious choice about what you should use. You know, a lot of that is just going to come with experience. Sometimes, like if you look at the problem and you see that you have more meshes than nodes, then maybe it'd be better just to do the node voltage analysis because you'd have less equations. So, I don't know, I don't really know how to tell you which one to choose, but I'll say this. If you choose one and it's not going well for you, start over again and use the other one, and maybe it'll work out better. This one actually, I mean, any problem you can actually use both methods for. Well, except if you have a non-planar circuit, then you have to use node voltage analysis. But if it's a planar circuit, like pretty much all of our circuits have been, either method works. So I'm going to use node voltage analysis this time. I'm going to do the same steps though. Do like the Super Kaufman. I've already drawn it for you so that you didn't have to watch me do it. I did it during the break. Same exact problem. I erased it and did it over so that you didn't see the mesh currents because it would just get confusing. Now we're going to label it, but this time instead of labeling the mesh currents, we're going to label the nodes. Okay, so we've got this ground node. So there's one node. This is the same node. Sometimes when you do this node voltage analysis, you might want to draw it with more like rounded corners, just because it kind of makes it more clear that these elements are all coming into the same exact ground node. And then, I don't know, just to make it consistent, kind of round that corner. There's no reason for it to be square, even though textbooks like to show it that way. And so let's see, we've got another node here, we've got a node here, we've got a node here. I'm going to round that corner too. So, all right, so now here's the circuit with all of the nodes. Okay, I haven't really labeled them yet, but I've identified the nodes. Now let's label them. So, okay, this node here, well, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and label them V1, V2, V3, and V4. I think that's all, right? And then the ground node. Yeah, so I've got 4 nodes, so I've labeled them V1, V2, V3, and V4. So I'm looking for 4 equations in those 4 unknowns. And the unknowns are the node voltages. That's specifically what I want. So if I get an unknown in the equation that's not a node voltage, like for instance Vy or Ix, then I know I have a little bit of work to do. But if you just follow these steps, the work kind of gets done for you. So so we've drawn it, we've labeled it. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the mesh current, but do it for node voltage. I'm going to go to my dependent sources, and I'm going to write their controlling quantities in terms of, not mesh currents, because I don't have mesh currents here, but in terms of node voltages this time. So the controlling quantity Vy is this here. Can I write Vy in terms of node voltages? Sure. Look, it's easy. V1 minus V2. Okay, so there's that dependent source. This dependent source has the controlling quantity Ix. Where's Ix? Here it is. Can I write Ix in terms of a node voltage? Sure. I know that the current leaving this node, right, is just V3 minus 0 over 2. So that's the opposite of Ix. So Ix is minus V3 over 2. So I just did that third step. For each dependent source, I wrote the controlling quantity in terms of node voltages. Okay? So by the way, notice I was kind of intentionally labeling my node voltages with numeric subscripts because my voltage that's unknown in the circuit had a Y, and so it's a way for me to distinguish between what's a node voltage and then what's another voltage in the circuit that's unknown, but it's not a node voltage. So I know that I'm looking for equations that only have node voltages, and so the ones with the numeric subscripts, because that's how I chose to label them. Okay, now the fourth step has to do with super nodes, because this is node voltage analysis. Well, what's the definition of a super node? Well, it's similar to the definition of a super mesh. Remember, a super mesh was a current source with the meshes on either side. So just by this kind of concept of duality, right? A super node, because a node is the dual of a mesh, would be a voltage source, because a voltage source is the dual of a current source, with the nodes on either side. Okay, do we have any voltage sources? Yes, we do. We've got 2 of them. Where'd my colored chalk go? So I'm going to draw a super mesh with that voltage source and the nodes on either side. So there's my first super node. Did I say mesh? Do you see a mistake? I think my videographer... Okay, maybe we'll cut.